Last year,
It's happened!
they went and took it.
He struck him out looking!
This year,
The Texas Rangers win the World Series!
they're here to run it back.
It's over!
This is Bleav in Texas Rangers, hosted by Mitch Ferreldis.
Not so great at home. Maybe better fortunes can come on the road. Welcome into this episode of Bleav in Texas Rangers, everybody. Be sure if you like what you're listening to, you rate 5 stars, you download, you add this to your weekly rotation of podcasts. You be sure to tell your friends about it as well. And if you don't want to just listen via audio on Apple or Spotify or the Bleav episode landing page, you can always find every Bleav in Texas Rangers episode, on YouTube, on the Bleav in Texas Rangers / Mitch Ferreldis YouTube channel. But let's get right into it. So we're recording this on the Monday morning, at least Monday morning for me. The off day for the Rangers after 3 games against the Angels. An old friend, Ron Washington, didn't go so great. Didn't really go so great at all. The Rangers proceeded to score 7 runs over the course of the 3-game stretch against the Angels, while the Angels proceeded to score 15. So if you want a blanket overlay of how this series or how this weekend went for the Rangers, that's evidence number 1, being outscored 15-6. That's not good. I mean, any basic math will tell you that. But more importantly, this is, and we've emphasized this again and again and again, when you play your divisional opponents, you have to beat them. And this was the first time that they've played the Angels this year, and already off to a bad start, down 1-2. They'll play the Angels again. I'm sure the Rangers will be better in terms of health-wise when they play the Angels again. Don't know when that next series will be off the top of my head, but you're already behind the 8 ball right now. It's the same thing that happened when they first played the Athletics back in April. You're behind the 8 ball when you lose those games early. At least with the Mariners, they were able to hang with them. And I think that series is even between them and the Mariners. They were able to even things up against the Astros again after struggling at home. Or no, they're a game behind the Astros right now in that regard. And look, don't look now, but I think standing watch is totally appropriate to do at this point in the season. So the Rangers are 24-24, and there's something fascinating about them being 500. I'll get to that later. But they're a game and a half back of the Mariners, and we knew they weren't going to be dormant for long. The Houston Astros have surged. They've won 8 of their last 10. They have surged to a 21-26 record and are now just 4 games back of the Mariners for the division lead. In an instant, the Astros have put immense pressure on the Rangers, just 2.5 games behind them. And you needed a series like this to take command because the Angels came in with 16 wins. 16 wins and 28 losses they came in at. The Angels are not in a good place right now. The Angels are down their best player in Mike Trout. They're down one of their heavily expensive veterans in Anthony Rendon. Like, there's a lot about the Angels that should have made this an easy series for the Rangers to pick up. And problems that we saw in the series against the Guardians continued into this series against the Angels, is that the offense just could not deliver in a moment of need. And yesterday they made Jose Soriano look like a all-star candidate. They made him look like a Cy Young candidate, the way that the young fellow was pitching. As far as why the offense is sputtering right now, I mean, you could point to a lot of things. As we've talked about, Corey Seager being off to a slow start this year has not really helped him. His power stroke appears to be coming back to him, and he was intentionally walked twice yesterday. So you could tell that the Angels were still fearful of what Corey Seager can do. He provided the only offense yesterday with a solo home run in the 4th inning. His other out, I should say, was a very hard hit out to left field. So if you need some encouragement as far as like how Corey Seager is doing, that might be it. The fact that he hit a home run that just barely escaped over the wall, and that he had a really hard hit out into left field in his first plate appearance. But the rest of the offense could not do much. 7 total hits, 2 of them coming off the bat of Josh Smith. So good to see him having a nice day at the plate in the 4-hole, no less, because Adolis Garcia was unavailable. We'll get to him in injury updates. But then everybody else, it was like sprinkle hit there, sprinkle hit there. Their best opportunity, they had the bases loaded with 2 outs and Jonah Heim at the dish. And as we've talked about before, Jonah Heim seems to be the guy that thrives in the late game situations, that thrives when there's 2 outs in the inning. And he flew out, which is like the exact opposite of what we'd expect Jonah Heim to do in that sort of a situation. But can't dwell on it for too long. The only thing you can do is figure out, why is the offense going silent? And I think a key piece to that is actually Nathaniel Lowe. And we talked about how well he had done since coming off of injured reserve, or injured list, I should say. But since May 8th, so May 8th was against Oakland, the final game against Oakland, he went 2 for 4. He scored twice. He drove in 3, and he walked twice. A great game for Nathaniel Lowe. A fantastic game. His average at that point was 343. His OPS was about 900. OPS was about 900. Fast forward to now. Since that 2-hit game, in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 games, he has 4 hits. And his batting average has dipped to 273, on base to 387, and slugging to 384. He's in a bit of a funk right now. And I know he had the walk-off hit by pitch on Saturday, which, it's funny. Always find creative ways to win baseball games these days. One of them is a bases loaded hit by pitch. Nate's struggling. And it doesn't help when they were already down Josh Young. They don't have Wyatt Langford. Corey Seager, as we've mentioned, is slow to start the year. Marcus Semien, he's playing every day. He's producing at close to Marcus Semien levels, but there's a lacking of consistency. Like, he really did well against Oakland, and then he disappeared against Colorado. He didn't do so great against Cleveland. Like, there was the highest of high with Marcus, and then now it's just kind of petered out to him back to being the leadoff hitter in the series. I mean, in the 3 games for Marcus, in the Saturday loss, he went 0 for 4, but he scored a run because he walked twice. And then he at least hit a home run in the Friday game against the Angels, but that was also his only hit. And he was responsible for 2 of the Rangers' 3 runs. You can't always have your leadoff hitter going 1 for 4, but he's at least contributing at the dish every now and then. It's not in high doses like the former MVP runner-up candidate that he is, and still plays like every now and then, but lack of offensive consistency is just killing this team. More importantly, it's when they're getting on base and then they're not able to bring anybody in. 1 for 6 with runners in scoring position and 7 left on base on Sunday. They were 2 for 12 with runners in scoring position in the 13-inning win. They left 12 on base. And then they were 0 for 1 with runners in scoring position in the 9-3 loss, meaning they only had 1 runner in scoring position. They left 4 men on base. They had 3 extra base hits. Heim homered, Semien homered, and then Josh Smith doubled. It's just a very rough stretch right now. And we understand there's injuries to the lineup, as I've listed a bunch. And Corey Seager has not been producing to the level that we would expect. And some guys have been in and out of the lineup because they're riding the pine for a bit and they can't seem to find that consistent stretch. I'll take 24 and 24 right now, though. It's not, it's not surprising, or no, not surprising, not the word. It's not an exciting record to be at. It's not the start that, say, the Dodgers have had. It's not the start the Braves have had. It's not the start that the Phillies have had, foreshadowing. You do hope that eventually they find their way out of this inconsistency, because as we've known them to do, they can produce runs in high volume in single games. It's just, it doesn't happen frequently enough. As far as good stock. So we talked about stock down with Nathaniel Lowe, but I wouldn't sell on that just yet. 4 hits in your last, 10 games. I think Nathaniel's going to get out of it relatively soon. I think the hit by pitch RBI is going to be a harbinger of things to come. As far as stock up, though, the starting pitching from Jose Urena was fantastic on Saturday. 6 innings, 4 hits allowed, an earned run. He struck out 3 on 101 pitches. So he was able to eat up a lot of innings in a close game. The stock is also up for Michael Lorenzen, who got tagged with the loss yesterday. But through 6 innings, he had allowed 0 runs to my recollection. Just checking. Yeah, all 4 of the runs came in the 7th inning. Through 6 innings, he had thrown a shutout, allowing only a couple of hits. He eventually ended with a line of 6 1/3, 3 hits allowed, 2 earned runs, and 6 strikeouts on 103 pitches. He got tagged with the loss because the runners that were left on base for the man behind him eventually came in to score. And that was the difference in the game for the Angels, was how they were able to attack Jonathan Hernandez. But it's twofold with Jonathan Hernandez, because he had gotten ahead of the hitters that he needed to. I think it was Jeff Wilson with Texas Rangers Daily, or Rangers Today. Sorry, I keep screwing up his affiliation. Jeff Wilson with Rangers Today. Read his stuff. He does a very good job collecting all the info that you need. He mentioned that Hernandez got ahead of Zach Neto and Kevin Pillar, who were 2 key catalysts that helped bring the Angels runs home. And there was some comments I know afterwards about, or even before, about how Jonathan Hernandez's pitch mix and how they just want him to attack hitters. Something to that ilk. Don't quote me on that. I'm kind of paraphrasing. But the bullpen, the rotation, the whole pitching staff has been decimated. It has been decimated. It's existing the way it is right now. And they need guys like Jonathan Hernandez, who had started the year injured and has now come back. They need guys like Jonathan Hernandez to contribute in a high volume and in these leverage situations, because they don't have Josh Sborz, right? Who's one of their late inning guys. And you can't just pitch David Robertson and Kirby Yates into the dirt, because eventually they're going to wear out. And as we're seeing right now, Kirby Yates has finally allowed his first run of the year. I know, let's freak out about it. But the tandem of Robertson and Yates works really, really well together. The problem is you can't have them pitch all the time. So 2 things need to happen with that. There needs to be a return to offense, first of all. Offense allows you to not have to use certain pitchers in certain situations. So when you produce runs, you save certain pitchers. But secondly, if you're called upon, you need to make the most of what pitches you have to use and your pitch selection and how you decide to approach hitters. Now, look, they do way more research than I do, right? I'm not here to break down, why did he throw this pitch at this time when he should have? No, that's not necessarily my job. My job is to basically dissect what changed in an approach. Like if you go up 0-2 on a batter and you try to get him to bite at an away off-speed pitch and he doesn't bite twice, then you got to go back to challenging him in the zone. You can't keep throwing pitches out of the zone to try and get him to bite. And I know it's hard to locate a baseball. I'm not saying that these guys are trying to miss the zone, because I don't think they are. It's just a matter of how they're approaching the at-bat, pitch in, pitch out. But it wasn't a great one for Jonathan Hernandez on Sunday. 22 total pitches, 15 of them were strikes. And the ones that were strikes, he kind of left right over the plate. Like the pitch that he threw to Pillar, that was right in the hot zone, and he drilled that ball to allow 2 more runs to score. I just hope that they can flush this. They have the day off today. Maybe they'll get some good news in regards to the injury front, which we'll transition to in just a sec. But for right now, just, do we freak out about this, or do we just understand that they're in a situation that is Not necessarily unique, because I think there's a lot of teams that are dealing with hefty injury lists right now, like the World Series counterpart, the Arizona Diamondbacks. They're dealing with a plethora of injuries right now to their rotation and their bullpen and their starting lineup. They're not alone. The Rangers aren't, but they are still dealing with key injuries, and they need to keep finding ways to play at or above 500 ball in the meantime. And then once they get all those key pieces back, maybe they can get back to well over 500 ball. And that brings us to what we were going to hit on next. So, a fascinating stat in the Bruce Bochy era that I didn't realize until I was reading a piece from Inside the Rangers today. Shout out Stefan Stevenson, who wrote this last night and pointed out that the Rangers have never been below 500 with Bruce Bochy as the manager. Now, is that considered a small sample size because he's been the manager for 1 and 2 months of a season? I don't think so necessarily. If anything, I think it further proves how good of a manager Boch is. Like, we saw what he was able to do with San Francisco. We're aware of how good of a manager he is. I think, if nothing else, he's, one, given a talented team to work with, but two, he really knows how to get to some of the guys and really push the right buttons when it comes to putting the team together. So they have never been below 500 with Bruce Bochy. However, the Rangers have lost their third consecutive series, which puts a lot of pressure on them to do well in this upcoming Philly series, who are the best team in baseball, by the way. 34-14 are the Phillies. Whereas the Rangers went 2-4 on their homestand, got swept by the Rockies, right? So they went streaking against the A's and the Royals, and then play the Rockies. They lose 3 straight. They lose 2 more in a row against the Guardians, and then were able to salvage the ending of that series, and then only take 1 game from the Angels. So all of a sudden, all that work you did to get so far ahead of 500, you're now back to 500. And I'll be very curious to see if this is the series that kind of wakes up the Rangers. You get to go against the best of the best. You get to go against the team that, for better or for worse, probably thought that they should have been in the World Series last year in the Phillies, because they were the team that had the 3-2 lead and then blew it with 2 games at home. They were the team that were in the World Series back in 2022, when they, similarly enough, were a wild card team with nothing to lose. I wonder if this will be the series that wakes up the Rangers offense, because Phillies Park's pretty good to hit in if you're a hitter. I think it's a pretty neutral park, I would say. But the Phillies have also loaded their lineup with a ton of power. When you think about Kyle Schwarber, you think about Bryce Harper, Trey Turner, JT Realmuto's got the stroke to him. Nicholas Castellanos has got a good power stroke, even though he's struggling. Like, they have guys in the lineup that will hit home runs if you ask them to. They won't have Trey Turner because he's been dealing with injury. But they still got Schwarber and they've still got Harper, who are 2 of the more important hitters in that lineup. And Alec Boehm as well had a really good stretch there back in April. Was hoping to carry that into May. Also, more importantly, you don't want to be on a stretch of losing series and losing consecutive series, especially how well they played against Oakland and Kansas City. It feels like forever ago now that was a thing, the way that they played against those teams, because they got swept by one of the worst teams in baseball, struggled against one of the better teams in the American League in the Guardians, and then struggled against a divisional opponent who is last in the division, even behind the Oakland Athletics. Like, the confidence feels, at least for me, my confidence feels a little shot right now. I don't know how their confidence feels. I'm sure they're trying to present themselves as it's early in the season. There's a lot of time left, and justifiably so. We are in end of May. There is a ton of time left for them to make up ground in the division and in the American League race. When it's the teams that they lost to, it seems to shine a brighter light on the fact that these are not the teams that you want to lose to. Like, you don't want to be in September looking back at games that happened in May and pointing to them as to why you couldn't get it done. Like if they lose, if they miss out on a spot in the postseason by 3 games, and then you go all the way back to May, you're like, oh, remember that time that they got swept by the Colorado Rockies? Like, you do not want to be in that position. And I hope that the Rangers don't end up in that position, because we've all agreed that the injuries are going to stabilize them and bring them, like the guys that are injured, I mean, are going to stabilize them. When Max Scherzer comes back, when Cody Bradford comes back, when Josh Young comes back, when Wyatt comes back, etc. Right now, they're just managing the best that they can. And some of the young guys in particular that are called upon to help haven't been the best of contributors. Jack Leiter, as we noted, has historically struggled to start his major league career. Owen White, same deal, out of the bullpen, struggled to start his major league career. The best of the bunch so far has been Cole Winn, which that's awesome because they need the strong pitching out of the bullpen. As long as they're not asking him to change the laces on his webbing or whatever, or the stitching on his webbing, I should say. When you're running thin on veteran help, you just need some of the young guys to help propel you through. That's the long and short thing of what I was trying to get to. All right, let's get to those injury updates. And we've got 3 key ones. We're going to start with the most recent, and that is Adolis Garcia, who, in a collision in the Saturday game with Marcus Semien, finished the game, was scheduled to be in the lineup today, or yesterday, I should say, but then was scratched and instead got an MRI to figure out what was wrong. And Bruce Bochy said that Garcia has an issue in the right forearm area, said that he would get an MRI, and then went on to say later that Garcia came out pretty good with his MRI. They're optimistic he'll be fine, but we'll see how he is come Tuesday in Philly. That's a bat you need in your lineup, as it's a bat you can't afford to not have, especially against this Philadelphia Phillies team, who have a really solid 1-2-3 at the top of their rotation right now, and Aaron Nola, Zach Wheeler, and Ranger Suarez. And I know for a fact they're going to get Ranger Suarez on Tuesday, and he's been the best of the bunch of that trio. So you need Garcia's bat, especially against the left-hander, to be able to provide in those cases, because we're probably going to see some Ezekiel Duran tomorrow instead of Josh Smith. We're probably going to see Evan Carter at the bottom of the order if they play him at all. Maybe it's Robbie Grossman that they go to instead. I'm curious to see how he approaches it with a left-hander tomorrow and how they approach it as the game goes on once Suarez eventually exits the game. Other injury update. This one is not so fun, and then the Josh Young injury update is not so fun either. Cody Bradford said he was shut down from throwing again because he wasn't recovering quick enough. Said he wasn't in pain, but just wasn't getting better. Which is not very encouraging, because at first he just went on the injured list because of a precautionary reason, if I'm not mistaken. And then he also had a fractured rib, I think it was. And now he's not recovering fast enough to be back in the rotation at time. And man, Cody was awesome to start the year. And he was making you wonder, oh, is he going to be the guy that gets to hang around in the rotation when all these healthy arms come back? And now he's just another casualty of the injured list. Like, you can make a starting rotation of the injured pitchers that the Rangers have right now between Nathan Eovaldi, Dane Dunning, Cody Bradford, Max Scherzer, Tyler Mahle, and Jacob deGrom. Like, that's 6 key guys on the shelf right now. Mahle, we don't know what he's going to be because it's been so long since he's pitched, but we know what we're getting out of Dunning and Eovaldi and Bradford. We know of the tenure of Scherzer and deGrom. Like, it's amazing how this team is able to manage while lacking some very key individuals. Speaking of Eovaldi and Dunning, I don't want to forget about them as well. Sean McFarland, passing this along, he's with Dallas Morning News. Dane Dunning and Nathan Eovaldi are both throwing bullpens today. Bochy said they'll just be around 15 to 20 pitches and reevaluated afterwards. To which Adam J. Morris with Lone Star Ball quoted and say, They've missed around the same amount of time. Dunning has seemingly been slightly ahead of Eovaldi and has been mentioned as possibly starting as soon as Tuesday. And it's possible Eovaldi returns by next weekend as well. And I will point out, I was looking ahead. Wednesday is a TBD as far as who the pitcher is going to be. Wednesday is. Tuesday, they're going to start John Gray to keep him on track. But then if you go to Wednesday, that might be a Dane Dunning slot. Or they call somebody else up from Round Rock. I don't know if they can call up Jack. I don't know if enough time has passed between his recent call up and send back down. And do you want to call up Jack? Do you want him to build his confidence in AAA? Or do you want to give him another shot at the big leagues where he could struggle against one of the best teams in baseball? I don't know. We'll see. I know Bochy has always seemingly played his cards right with what he's had, which right now is John Gray, Jose Urena, Andrew Heaney, and then Michael Lorenzen, at least for the foursome. And then you got to find one more guy, and maybe it's a bullpen game with the day off that they've had and the couple of days off that they had in the last couple of weeks here. The Josh Young injury update is not so great. So Josh Young, his timeline was originally, when he first fractured his hand, it was originally 6 to 8. Now it's 8 to 10 weeks. And then beyond that, the timeline has been pushed back once again per Dallas Morning News. It looks like it might not be until July or perhaps even after All-Star break that Josh will return from the injured list. That's a guy that you wonder how much do you miss him? Because Josh Smith, he's been awesome when filling in, but he kind of regressed to start the month of May. I know he had the 2-hit affair yesterday, which was positive to see, especially out of the 4-hole. But they need some consistency at that position because that seems to be the only position that they can't really get a consistent day in, day out. Third base is a tricky one. And they need production out of that spot. They need good defense out of that spot. Those were two things that Josh Young provided. And if he's not back by until July, it's, oh man. But how about this? If you're excited about prospects of the Rangers, Kumar Rocker, remember him, who the Rangers drafted a year after he was, or a couple of years after he was drafted in the top 10, same draft as Jack Leiter. So Kumar Rocker was throwing off a mound in Globe Life Field yesterday, I Bleav. He's recovering from Tommy John surgery, for those that are unaware. And the reports say that he could start facing hitters as soon as June 1st. So right now he's just throwing pens. He's just throwing off mounds. But progress indeed if they can get Kumar back on a mound sometime in early June and then let him progress, see how he does in the minors, and maybe he can eventually be an option that the Rangers could consider in some of these later months. I don't know how close he is to big league ready. I just know that after Vanderbilt, he was playing a lot of independent ball, which could possibly serve as a minor league tenure, if you think about it. So he has a chance to find himself in the bigs relatively quickly, I would think. So those are injury updates. And now it is off to Philadelphia. And it is going to be, it's going to be a fun one. As I mentioned, the Phillies are 34-14, 10 games above 500. Hosting the 24-24 Texas Rangers this weekend. The Phillies are the best team in baseball right now. And they have very much played like the best team in baseball right now. And it doesn't matter who they're playing on their schedule. It's just a matter of they're beating the piss out of teams right now. Game 1 is on Tuesday, May 21st. So that's tomorrow if you're listening to this on this Monday that I'm taping. Ranger Suarez, as I mentioned, is going to go against John Gray. This might be, well, it's the only pitching matchup where we are aware of, but this might be the best pitching matchup of the weekend. Suarez is 8-0 to start the year, and he has a 1.37 ERA. So not only is he getting the wins on the mound with the help of his team, he's primarily responsible for why they're winning. But John Gray is a tough customer as well. 2-1 record and a 2.08 ERA for John. As we've mentioned, since that Cubs start at the beginning of the year, John's been one of the best pitchers in baseball, one of the best in the American League. So maybe he can keep that up against the Phillies on Tuesday. As we mentioned, Wednesday is a TBD and a TBD for Philadelphia, and the same goes for Thursday. So it'll be something to watch who they decide to go to, because we're at that part in the rotation where they have to get kind of frisky. And as we alluded to, maybe Dane Dunning is one of the guys that gets an opportunity here to step in. But that's going to do it for this edition of Bleav in Texas Rangers. We'll be back after the Philly series is done, and we'll get you ready for the next series upcoming for Texas, which is a trip to Minnesota to take on the Twins. So until that time, Bleav in Texas Rangers.